Where the fuck have you been? I told you to come straight here. I've had people out combing the streets looking for you.
I'm sorry, I don't always do as I'm told.
Given how 50 Shades of Grey ends, with Anna walking away from Christian after a particularly cruel punishment, it might seem like a clean break. But the story was never meant to end there. That final moment with the elevator doors closing does more than just mirror their first meeting. It sets up a continuation. Anna leaves because she feels broken, disrespected, and deeply hurt. It's a moment of power for her, but also a sad one because she's walking away from someone she genuinely cared about. And while she may have left him in that moment, the franchise doesn't let their story end there. That's where the next two films come in, and it's also where the potential for a 50 Shades 4 could find new ground to explore, especially with the idea of a fresh cast or a next-generation continuation. A fourth installment could take several directions, but one compelling route is to acknowledge that Christian and Anna's relationship, while central to the trilogy, wasn't the healthiest foundation. So instead of continuing with more of their story, 50 Shades 4 could take a step forward in time and focus on a younger generation, perhaps their child or new characters entirely, who navigate relationships in the shadow of the past. By doing this, the franchise could modernize its themes and correct some of the harmful portrayals that dominated the original trilogy. The film could explore how someone raised in the aftermath of Christian and Anna's tumultuous dynamic views love, control, and power. Christian and Anna's son, for instance, could be a fascinating focal point. Imagine a character who has grown up aware of his parents' complicated relationship and the intense media scrutiny it attracted. How would someone like that approach intimacy and trust? Would he fear repeating his father's mistakes? A new female lead could be someone strong, independent, and deeply aware of consent culture, offering a sharp contrast to Anna's early naivety. Their relationship could begin with honest, awkward conversations about boundaries and desires, instead of secret contracts and bedrooms that are introduced with little emotional safety. This would also be a great opportunity for 50 Shades 4 to reframe BDSM in a much healthier light. Instead of depicting kink as something born from trauma and abuse, as Christian's backstory implies, the fourth film could show it as a consensual, joyful, and even healing form of connection. It might follow characters who attend workshops, communicate openly, and respect each other's limits, thereby giving audiences a more accurate, respectful portrayal of the BDSM community. Casting younger, rising stars could breathe new life into the franchise as well. A 50 Shades sequel that caters to today's viewers would likely need to shift tone, from overt shock value and melodrama to something more grounded and introspective. Think of a Gen Z couple grappling with emotional vulnerability and communication, perhaps with one of them coming from a background similar to Christian's but striving to break the cycle. These are themes many young adults today are grappling with, and it could make for a much more relatable story. A sequel like this could also explore therapy and healing in ways the original trilogy never quite managed to do. Christian's mental health and his past traumas were mostly used to justify his darker tendencies, but never meaningfully explored. A new lead who actually engages in therapy, perhaps even group sessions focused on emotional growth or recovery from abuse, would be a powerful message. It would say that acknowledging trauma isn't enough, you have to work through it. Moreover, a 50 Shades 4 could explore how fame, wealth, and social media complicate relationships today. What happens when privacy is lost, when boundaries are broadcasted or judged publicly? How do couples navigate trust when the world is always watching? These are uniquely modern problems, and embedding them in a romance story rooted in the legacy of Anna and Christian could add meaningful depth. Another direction might be an anthology-style sequel, telling a new story with entirely different characters, but keeping the franchise's branding and erotic themes. Maybe it's a story of two people in a high-powered political or corporate world drawn together through a carefully negotiated BDSM dynamic. But this time, the balance of power is clearer, more equal, and more mature. The central question could shift from will she stay with him despite his controlling behavior to how do we build intimacy and trust when both of us are powerful and guarded? That would allow the franchise to explore mature themes while showing a different side of desire and partnership. There's also room for redemption arcs. Christian Grey was portrayed as both tragic and manipulative, but perhaps a future film could explore his continued growth through the eyes of someone else, like a therapist, a mentee, or even a former submissive who shares her side of the story. It would provide space to challenge the myth that love fixes everything, and instead show that people need to fix themselves before they can truly love others in a healthy way. At its core, 50 Shades of Grey was about the line between control and connection, between fantasy and reality. The problem was it often blurred those lines in ways that felt exploitative or harmful. But that doesn't mean the story's over. There's still space to take those initial ideas and evolve them, especially in a cultural moment that's more focused than ever on consent, boundaries, and self-awareness. So while 50 Shades of Grey might have left Anna broken and Christian misunderstood, a new installment could show characters learning from those mistakes. It could offer a richer, more balanced take on romance and desire, one where characters grow, learn to communicate, and find power not through dominance but through mutual respect and vulnerability. And in doing so, 50 Shades 4 could not only extend the story, but redeem the franchise, proving that even the most controversial love stories can evolve into something worth watching again. If 50 Shades 4 moves forward, one great way to keep things fresh while still honoring the original trilogy would be to bring in a younger cast and shift the focus to the next generation. Instead of continuing with Christian and Anna's exact story, the movie could explore the life of their son Theodore Teddy Grey, who's now a young adult. It could follow Teddy as he starts navigating adulthood, maybe stepping into his father's business world or dealing with complicated relationships that in some ways mirror the emotional messiness his parents went through. This direction opens up casting opportunities for today's rising stars like Jacob Elordi or Jenna Ortega, or actors from shows like Outer Banks or Euphoria. These younger names already have a strong fan following, so including them could help the franchise reach a broader, more Gen Z audience while keeping the story grounded in the 50 Shades universe. The original film centered on taboo romance, but a new version could be more emotionally complex and reflective of modern values, like clear communication, mental health awareness, and enthusiastic consent. The romance could still be intense and daring, just with a more thoughtful and layered approach. A Gen Z couple working through love and identity issues while also dealing with the weight of Christian and Anna's public legacy could give the film a fresh tone and real depth. To tie it all together, the original leads, Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson, could return in smaller roles as Christian and Anna, now parents trying to guide their children. Their presence would be a nice touch for longtime fans, adding some emotional continuity to the story. Christian might try to warn Teddy not to repeat his mistakes, only to realize his son has to find his own way. And that's that for today's video. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Your suggestions for future videos are always welcome in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay in the loop, and if you want, you can share your thoughts about this video in the comments.